Today is Wednesday, March 23rd. What to expect from President Biden's trip to Europe. He leaves today. And what new compromises Ukraine's president says he's ready to make. Also, where severe weather continues to impact millions of Americans. And how the latest Supreme Court nominee responded to lawmakers' questions about all kinds of controversial topics. Plus, which two big tech companies were hit by the same hacker group, what NASA says about so-called SuperEarths that exist outside our solar system, and which billionaire just made one of the largest ever donations to Habitat for Humanity. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. A dangerous severe storm outbreak is still making its way across the southern U.S. Most recently, several tornadoes were reported in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. At least one of them even tore through the city of New Orleans for the first time in more than 5 years. At least one person died and several others were hurt nearby. Search and rescue teams have been working throughout the night to check on everyone else in case anyone is trapped and needs help. The worst of these storms moved through after dark, so it's been tough to see the extent of the damage. But at least one sheriff in Louisiana said, quote, "There are houses that are missing." There are also downed trees and power lines and damaged gas lines, so there's likely a long road to recovery ahead. Not just in Louisiana, but also in Alabama and Mississippi that got damaging storms last night, and Texas that got the brunt of it on Monday. Today, the system is headed east, but it is expected to be less widespread and less intense. The biggest concern at this point is the rain and some local flooding. Today, President Biden is leaving for the most important overseas trip of his presidency so far. He'll be talking with NATO allies in Belgium, then we'll visit Poland, all to talk about Russia's war in Ukraine and the humanitarian crisis that's followed. And that starts with more punishments against Russia. Top White House officials say President Biden and his Western allies are preparing for more economic sanctions. Biden is also expected to talk about efforts to enforce the long list of sanctions already imposed by the U.S. and Western allies. On top of that, the group is set to consider adding more security on the eastern edge of NATO, how to make Europe less dependent on Russian fuel, and more. Stay tuned. Well, nearly a month into war, and Ukraine's leader says he's ready to make new compromises. Ukrainian President Zelensky says he would consider dropping his country's request for full NATO membership. Remember, that was one of Russia's key demands before the invasion started. In return, Zelensky wants Russian troops to leave his country. Plus, he wants a ceasefire and a guarantee of Ukraine's security. Once again, he's asking to meet with Russian President Putin. But so far, Putin has refused direct talks. And other top Russian leaders have called for even more, like for Ukraine to give up their claim to some eastern territories. In the meantime, Russian forces are escalating their attacks against Ukraine from the ground, air, and sea. But they're still facing stiff resistance from the Ukrainians. American defense officials say they're seeing evidence Ukraine is going more on the offense now, instead of just defending themselves. For example, they've been actively trying to take back territory Russia already seized. No matter what, America's national security advisor says, quote, "This war will not end easily or rapidly." The Russian government is still working hard to control the narrative of the war within its own country. Just this week, the Russian parliament tightened its censorship law. So it's now a crime to discredit any government leaders or agencies, even those working abroad. The law bans terms like war or invasion to describe what's happening in Ukraine, and anyone who breaks the law could get up to 15 years in prison. Already, free speech is hard to come by in Russia. In recent weeks, the government has blocked access to Facebook and Instagram. About 24 independent news operations have been forced to shut down or chose to stop working. And more than 15,000 people have been detained for taking part in anti-war protests. Also this week, Russia's leading opposition leader was just sentenced to another 9 years in prison. Alexei Navalny is already serving a 2.5-year sentence for fraud. But the whole case is widely seen as politically motivated, just a way to keep Navalny behind bars and keep him from addressing the outside world. Still, he's found a way. Navalny's lawyers have posted his letters from jail on social media. In the more recent ones, he asks Russians to protest the war. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is in for another day of grilling from senators. And already things have gotten pretty heated for the Supreme Court nominee. Yesterday's questioning lasted more than 13 hours, and it covered a lot of ground. So here are just a few highlights. A couple of Republicans asked Jackson if she had been too lenient with defendants, like in child sex abuse cases. To that, she said, quote, "Nothing could be further from the truth." A couple others also asked Jackson whether she has a hidden agenda to incorporate critical race theory into our legal system. She responded that the issue really doesn't come up for her as a judge. To questions about abortion, she said she thought it was a settled law already, based on precedent set by the landmark Supreme Court decision Roe v. Wade. There were also a few questions Jackson would not answer, like whether the 9-member Supreme Court should be expanded, whether she's concerned about violent crimes that go unsolved, or how often she goes to church. But overall, even though Republicans had some tough questions, the Democrats mostly just praised the judge and her experience. And because of that, experts say she's on track for confirmation no matter what happens at this hearing. Even if no Republicans vote for her, Democrats will be able to confirm her with their simple majority. Still, this confirmation hearing will go on for another 2 days. More news is coming up, but first, a quick break to thank our sponsor. Style or comfort? How do you choose? Well, we no longer have to, thanks to Tommy John's new loungewear. The fabrics are super soft and cozy and always feel really high quality and look great. It feels like a treat every time I put on my Tommy John lounge joggers or my women's lounge Henley, even though I wear them at some point practically every day. And get this, Tommy John loungewear features tagless labels because you can't be comfy when a tag is scratching you. And when you're getting that kind of thought and detail put into comfort, you know you're in good hands. My husband knows it too. He's really picky about his comfort level, so that's saying a lot. In fact, his favorite work socks are Tommy John. He says they're the only dress socks he can find that don't fall down and are comfortable all day long. Tommy John does not have customers, they have fanatics, and I'm one of them. So see for yourself and get 20% off your first order right now at TommyJohn.com/newsworthy. Shop TommyJohn.com/newsworthy for 20% off. TommyJohn.com/newsworthy. See the site for details. In a major cosmic milestone, NASA confirms it has now discovered more than 5,000 planets, besides the 8 we all learned about in school. These ones are outside of our solar system, so they're called exoplanets. NASA says some are gas giants that are even larger than Jupiter. They're also what's known as SuperEarths, meaning they're similar to our planet but bigger. And then there are some worlds that are orbiting 2 stars at once, so they basically have 2 suns. This is all pretty impressive since it wasn't until the 90s that humans had discovered any planet outside our solar system. Astronomers have been busy doing this for the last 30 years, hoping to one day find a planet where life could exist. So far, the exoplanets they've discovered are thousands of light years away from us, so no one can go to study them in person. But NASA did suggest a robot could visit an exoplanet one day. Hackers were able to breach 2 top American tech companies. First, Okta. It's a company that manages 100 million logins. It confirmed it was hacked months ago and is just now telling its customers. The scope of the breach is not clear, but it could have major consequences since more than 15,000 clients rely on Okta to protect their networks. We're talking government agencies, universities, and huge companies like FedEx, Peloton, and T-Mobile. Well, Okta confirmed yesterday a group of hackers did get access to one of its employees' laptops for 5 days in January. And that came after a hacking group posted screenshots of Okta's internal system online, seemingly trying to prove that it hacked the company. The same hacking group also bragged about stealing data from other big companies like Samsung and most recently, Microsoft. In fact, just last night, Microsoft confirmed the hack, but said its security teams actually interrupted the group mid-attack. And the hackers only got access to one account. Microsoft said that's not severe enough to cause a, quote, elevation of risk. Microsoft did say it had already been tracking the group for weeks, trying to nail down how it's been hacking into these massive companies. Well, Netflix is getting 3 more mobile games, including its first ever first-person shooter game. And that means players view the action as if it's through the eyes of the characters they're controlling. And in this one, you'll fight waves of zombies. It's not out yet, but Netflix will only say it's coming soon. And 2 of the other new mobile games are already available, including a brick-breaking game and an educational role-playing game. Netflix has been expanding its portfolio since it announced its jump into the gaming world last November. Separately, it's not a video game, but it kind of makes you feel like you're in one. Zoom released new virtual avatars that let you show up to meetings as an animal. That means you can pick between a few different creatures like a dog, rabbit, fox, cat, or a cow, and instead of your image, the animal will appear and mimic your movements. Habitat for Humanity just got a multi-million-dollar boost. One of the world's richest women, Mackenzie Scott, donated $436 million to the organization so it can keep building affordable housing around the world. That marks her biggest donation ever, or at least the biggest publicly disclosed one. And while the money is going to different chapters of Habitat for Humanity around the country, several of them say it's their largest donation ever received. Habitat for Humanity says Scott's donation will help boost affordable housing and homeownership in Black and minority communities. It will also help them campaign for new legislation, research housing barriers, and more. Meanwhile, Scott has given away nearly $9 billion since 2019 when she announced she would donate most of her fortune. And she could have a lot more donating ahead of her, since Forbes says right now she's worth more than $49 billion. Remember, Scott divorced Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and got a 4% stake in that company. And that's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Work Wednesday, when we break down one interesting career or work-related news story every Wednesday. But first, a message from our sponsor. As you know, researching is a big part of my job. So now, as a parent, I find myself researching, maybe a little too much, about everything I give my baby. So let me save you some time and energy and share a little bit about the diapers I've been using for my baby. Pampers Cruisers 360 Fit is Pampers' best fit and protection for an active baby. So I appreciate avoiding a wrestling match at every diaper change because Cruisers 360 Fit is quick and easy to pull on and quick and easy to take off with these easy tear sides. Also, it has a 360 gap-free fit, so it's super soft and stretches really nicely around my baby's waist. Plus, these diapers lock wetness away from skin for up to 12 hours, which helps to keep my baby's skin healthy, even while we all sleep through the night, at least most nights. And this next part is really important to me as well. Pampers Cruisers 360 Fit is hypoallergenic, so it's free of elemental chlorine bleaching, parabens, and latex. You can buy in store, look for the Pampers Cruisers 360 Fit, and download the Pampers Club app today to start earning rewards with every diapers and wipes purchase. Now back to Work Wednesday. Well, it looks like the workers getting the biggest pay raises these days are women. The Atlanta Federal Reserve says women's wages were up 4.4% last month from a year before. Men also got raises, but not quite as much. Their wages were up 4.1%. And this marks the sixth straight month women's pay bumps were higher than men's. But this doesn't necessarily mean the pay gap has gone away completely. Women saw a lot of setbacks at the start of the pandemic. And as the Wall Street Journal reports, women make up an uneven share of lower-paying jobs in the service industry, like in personal care, food prep, and healthcare support. Those happen to be the same industries that have had a hard time finding and keeping workers since reopening after the peak of the pandemic. So that's why women in those fields are getting raises. And that's not all. Women who switch jobs are also seeing big pay bumps. The research group Conference Board says about 31% of the women who left an old job for a new opportunity are making at least 30% more than before. Still, even after these gains, the latest government data shows the average woman's full-time weekly earnings are just 83% of what their male counterparts earn. Well, thank you so much for joining us as part of your daily routine. We'll catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.